This just-in SCOTUS says hold my beer. The Supreme Court, everyone. Those black-robed folks who decide what's constitutional while we decide what's on Netflix. They've been busy lately, especially when it comes to the First Amendment and those Second Amendment folks, the NRA. Now, I'm no legal expert, I just play one on TV, but this latest ruling, it's got even me scratching my head. Basically, the court seems to be saying money equals speech, and if that's the case, well, let's just say my wallet's feeling a little hoarse. You see, they've essentially given a big thumbs up to corporations and organizations like the NRA to spend unlimited cash on political campaigns. Now, I'm all for free speech, but this feels more like free shouting, where the loudest, richest voice drowns everyone else out. It's like a game show where the person with the most money automatically wins, regardless of the answer. And the prize? Influencing our elections. Free speech or free-for-all? Decoding the legal maze. Now, I know what you're thinking. John, this sounds complicated. Can you explain it in a way that even a drunken sea captain could understand? And the answer is, probably not. But I'll try. Basically, the First Amendment says the government can't restrict our freedom of speech. Simple, right? Wrong. Turns out, there are all sorts of exceptions and loopholes, and the Supreme Court gets to decide what they are. It's like they got to write the rules of the game after it already started. And guess what? They just handed a giant microphone to anyone with deep pockets. See, before there were limits on how much money corporations and groups like the NRA could spend on elections, the idea was to keep things fair, so one giant voice wouldn't drown out all the others. Money talks, but can it buy you a constitution? We've all heard the saying money talks, but apparently, according to the Supreme Court, it now sings, dances, and writes legislation too. That's right, folks. By equating political spending with free speech, they've essentially said that the more money you have, the louder your voice gets. And in a system supposedly built on one person, one vote, that's about as messed up as a bowl of soup at a buffet. Think about it. If a regular Joe like you or me wants to get our message out there, we're stuck with things like writing strongly worded letters to our representatives, which, let's be honest, probably end up in the recycling bin, or maybe organizing a bake sale to raise funds. But if a giant corporation wants to influence an election, they can just reach into their overflowing coffers and buy themselves a whole campaign's worth of airtime. It's like trying to have a conversation with someone using a megaphone while you're stuck with a party horn. Sure, you're both technically making noise, but only one of you is going to be heard. And spoiler alert, it's not the one with the party horn. The Founding Fathers rolling in their graves or just spinning? You gotta wonder what the Founding Fathers would say about all this. I mean, these were the guys who fought tooth and nail for democracy, for a system where everyone had a voice. Now, they weren't perfect, not by a long shot, but they did believe in the power of the people, not the power of the purse. Imagine Thomas Jefferson, quill in hand, drafting the Declaration of Independence. Do you think he ever stopped and thought, you know what would make this whole life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness thing even better? If we let corporations buy their way into power? Yeah, me neither. This isn't about left versus right, folks. This is about right versus wrong. Because when our elected officials are beholden to their wealthy donors instead of their constituents, we all lose. It's like going to a restaurant and having the waiter ignore your order while catering to the guy who just tipped them $100. Sure, you're both technically customers, but only one of you is getting served. Section 5. Congress shall make no law, except when it's convenient. Remember that whole Congress shall make no law, abridging the freedom of speech thing? Yeah, about that. It seems like the Supreme Court's definition of abridging is about as flexible as a gymnast on a trampoline, because while they're busy bending over backward to protect the speech of corporations and special interest groups, they seem to have forgotten all about the actual people this amendment was supposed to protect. It's like they're saying, sure, Congress can't limit your speech, but they can sure as heck let someone else drown you out with a bullhorn. Which, last time I checked, is kind of the same thing. Look, I get it. The First Amendment is complicated. It's not always black and white. There are shades of gray. Section 6 NRA, not your average book club. Now, let's talk about the NRA for a second, shall we? They're the folks who love guns. Like, really, really love guns. And they're not afraid to spend a whole lot of money to make sure everyone knows it. In fact, they're practically the poster child for this whole money equals speech debacle. See, the NRA isn't just some group of gun enthusiasts meeting up at the local VFW hall to talk shop. They're a powerful lobbying organization with deep pockets and even deeper connections to politicians. And they use those resources to influence elections and legislation in a way that would make even the most seasoned political operative blush. Now, I'm not here to debate the Second Amendment or anyone's right to own a gun. Section 7. When Second Amendment rights trump First Amendment freedoms. The irony here is thicker than a bowl of grits. The Supreme Court, in its infinite wisdom, has decided that the rights of the Second Amendment, specifically the right to bear arms as interpreted by the NRA, somehow trump the rights of the First Amendment, the one about freedom of speech. It's like saying, sure, you can talk, but only if the guy with the gun agrees with what you're saying. This isn't just about guns, folks. It's about the erosion of our fundamental rights. Because once you start picking and choosing which rights are more important than others, you open the door to all sorts of abuses. Section 8. So, you think you can speak freely? Think again. Here's the thing about free speech. It's not really free if you can't afford to be heard. And thanks to the Supreme Court, the price of admission to the public square just went way up. Think about it. If you're a regular person with a regular job and a regular bank account, your ability to influence the political process just got a whole lot smaller. Because while you're stuck trying to make your voice heard above the din, corporations and special interest groups are free to blast their message from every loudspeaker in the country. It's like trying to have a conversation in a hurricane. Sure, you're technically free to speak, but good luck getting anyone to hear you over the roar of the wind and the crashing of the waves. Section 9. Big money, bigger voices. Is this democracy or an auction? With this latest ruling, it seems the Supreme Court has officially declared America a giant political auction. Forget one person, one vote, it's now $1, one vote. And unfortunately, most of us can't afford the campaign contributions it takes to make our voices heard above the cacophony of corporate cash. It's like going to a town hall meeting, where the only people allowed to speak are the ones who can afford to buy a microphone. Sure, everyone else is technically allowed to be there, but good luck getting a word in edgewise when the wealthy and well-connected are hogging all the airtime. This isn't just about politics, folks. It's about the very fabric of our society. Section 10. Welcome to America, where the highest bidder gets to speak. So, congrats, America! You've just been upgraded from a democracy to a plutocracy, where the highest bidder gets to decide the rules. Forget about the will of the people. It's the weight of their wallets that matters now. Imagine a world where your access to healthcare, education, and even clean water is determined by how much money you have. Sounds dystopian, right? Well, that's the reality we're facing if we don't start taking this issue seriously. Because when corporations and special interest groups are allowed to buy unlimited influence in our political system, they're essentially buying the ability to shape our laws and regulations in their favor. Section 11. What's next? SCOTUS endorses yelling fire in a crowded theater? If this latest ruling is any indication, the Supreme Court seems to be on a mission to dismantle the First Amendment one case at a time. Who knows what's next? Maybe they'll decide that yelling fire in a crowded theater is perfectly fine, as long as you're a wealthy corporation with a vested interest in causing chaos. The point is, folks, that this isn't just about one ruling or one issue. It's about a much larger trend of eroding our fundamental rights in the name of corporate greed and political expediency. We need to start holding our elected officials accountable for their actions and demand that they prioritize the needs of the people over the desires of their wealthy donors. Because if we don't, we risk losing the very freedoms that make America the envy of the world.